DW Africa Link.
Imagine being held responsible for a debt you had no hand in creating. That's the reality for Ugandans facing the country's soaring public debt. Now, as of the latest figures, each Ugandan owes between 2.5 million to 3 million shillings, roughly $830 to cover a national debt nearing $32 billion. But how do citizens really feel about government borrowing and the weight of this growing burden?
In true economics, genuine economics, borrowing is part and parcel of what governments should do in order to keep money in check, to keep inflation in check and stuff like that. However, third world countries like Uganda are not only borrowing just to keep our finances and economics in check. They are borrowing for the sake of it, for selfish interests.
I think our debt burden has reached what ordinarily someone would term as critical mass. The borrowing wouldn't have been bad in itself. The question is, when we borrow, how is the money spent?
I'm Adjoati Kwamadumna, and welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that truly matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Uganda's recent approval of a 9 trillion shilling loan has reignited debate and concern over the nation's rising public debt. For many Ugandans, the impact of this borrowing is barely visible. Promised roads are unbuilt, living conditions remain stagnant, and numerous infrastructure projects are left unfinished despite substantial government funding. The critical question persists: what does this mounting debt mean for ordinary Ugandans? And to help us explore this, we're joined by Stephen Allo. He's an economist and public financial management specialist, and UW correspondent Frank Yiga in Uganda. And for this discussion, we are joined by Stephen Allo. He's an economist and a public financial management specialist. We also have DW correspondent in Uganda, Frank Yiga. Welcome, gentlemen. Well, let me begin with you, Stephen, since you are our expert. What is the public debt situation like in Uganda, and why should it matter to the ordinary Ugandan?
First of all, thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure to join the conversation. It's something that I hold dear to the heart because ultimately it affects everyone in the society, everyone in the community. I don't know if the public is aware, but our public debt for Uganda is now, it's quite huge now. As of the end of last financial year, which ended in June 2025, we had about 116.2 trillion UGX in public debt, which is quite huge. It's a big step. And I know the government is always saying the debt to GDP is sustainable. It is just about 51% of the GDP. But it's really not that sustainable if you look at the way things are going on in Uganda, look at the public administration, look at how we are expanding. And you ask me that, how does this relate to the common person? Why should the common person be interested? It affects all aspects of everyone. If you see the roads not being worked on, if you see the projects not being completed, if you see its effects on health, its effects on education, its effects on the to immunization, you can structure it down to all sorts of things. So if you look through the media, you realize that over in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Parliament has just approved another loan.
Yeah.
It's now increasing our public debt. So, well, you could say that 2-3 years ago it was sustainable, but if we continue with these trends, it's not sustainable. When we look at the discipline in the public finance management, the discipline is kind of going down. We have a very good PFM Act, which is the Public Finance Management Act, which kind of lines how government is going to invest. How are we going to maintain the money? How are we going to fight the corruption? All these things, you see them not being adhered to. So we're seeing we're constantly borrowing. But
Right.
what you see, what surprises me is that most of the projects we've borrowed for are not implemented on time.
But I want us to stay on the point about the new loan that was approved in Parliament. And Frank, and this is to you, we understand not all of the members of Parliament were involved in the approval of this loan. How did this happen?
Yeah, thank you, Ajoa. When you say the latest loan approved by Parliament, an ordinary Uganda may even fail to get track of this loan because we've kept borrowing every now and then. Now, the latest loan Parliament approved amounts to 162 million US dollars, and the government explained that this lump sum will finance Makerere University's science, technology, and innovation education project expected to progress into modernity. So that is the reason they gave us why they had to, get this loan. But of course, there's a procedure before getting a loan. According to the parliament procedures, you're supposed to MPs, there should be a reasonable number of MPs because we have over 500 MPs who sit in parliament. At least half of those should be present to approve a loan. The economic committee that scrutinizes the bill and reasons why we want to acquire this loan. But unfortunately, this was not the case because the MPs were recalled from recess, and it's just a handful of them that came to Parliament to approve this loan. And some rules were also bent. For instance, Parliament gives 45 days to approve a loan, but in this time it was reduced down to 25 days. So when you look into all the processes that were on table, the amendments of rules, editing of rules, you could see that there is a selfish interest behind these loans. And even the timing itself, the loans are coming at the time when there's politics and Ghana's politics commercialized. So you can see that all the rules were bent in favor of having these loans passed.
What has the other members of parliament said concerning the rules that were bent? Because in Ghana, when such a thing happens, first of all, you need a quorum to be able to approve something like this. And if you have less than 50 of more than 500 members of parliament passing it, then it means that, like you rightly said, all rules were ignored. What have the other members of parliament been saying?
Well, members of parliament were in dismay, many of them, because the majority of MPs in parliament subscribe to the ruling NRM party. And you cannot pass a bill without the approval. Definitely, they stand to win. So they had nothing to do about it. But of course, they totally knew that these loans were approved for selfish motive. Because when campaigns, when politics, money needs to be spread and given out as gifts to the voters to win votes, to woo them into victory.
That's on suspicion that is what the money is going to be used for, but we are not sure that is indeed what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, they say there's no smoke without fire. We've seen this happen every now and then because, first of all, the NRM party at one point were tasked to explain their source of income, their source of revenue. But they could not explain, they could not tell the parliament or the public where they get their money from. They spend, the expenditures are so high, and you can definitely know that this money comes from the national coffers. So this is the money that they pass in parliament in the name of loans, the one they divert to, giving out to voters in this election period. So that is what the MP suspect.
But is it the case that we are saying there are no development on the ground that matches the amount that is being borrowed? Is that what we are saying?
Well, you could give argument for, the money borrowed, for example, to develop the production of oil. You could see some work on ground. Maybe that one is justifiable. Well, the access, for example, to roads in the upcountry areas have improved with something. But if you look at the value for money, it is like borrowing 100 million. I'm giving an example, borrowing 100 million to construct a shed, which would cost you 5 million. but you borrowed 100 million. So there's no value for money. If you do some audit of, for example, some of our roads, they are the most expensive in Africa. If you look at, for example, our express highway, it's one of the most expensive roads in Africa. Is it something that was done? Is it a first class? Is it something that was so classic? I mean, you don't see the difference with other roads across the region, or even some across the region is far much better. But we are spending more money on some of the things. So if you look at that, and where is the extra money going? Is it going really for development, or someone is taking that money? So you see, also there's been so much inflated cost of projects. The costs have been inflated, so we are paying more. Some of these loans are borrowed on very unnecessary terms. The interest payment is so high, the commitment fees are so high. We are seeing, even after borrowing and money has been approved, the loans have been approved by for example, the World Bank, the Africa Development Bank, you see that the projects are not starting. Take 3 years when the loan has been approved and we've not started a project. So what I'm saying, me from the economics perspective, borrowing is not bad if the money is put into good use. But we're seeing from time and time again, money has not been put into good use. Projects are delaying. Projects are not being implemented on time. And every time we delay, we pay penalties, we pay interest costs, we pay commitment fees that we are not utilizing. So you find that we are having a lot of areas to pay, and yet the project is not moving.
Right. Stephen, realistically, from the economic point of view, if this borrowing does not stop, how much more vulnerabilities are we going to see among the general public?
Well, the borrowing has to stop at some point, because you cannot borrow forever. It will reach a stage where even the people you're borrowing from cannot give you more money. If you borrow and you keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, it has to stop somewhere. But we're seeing a situation where, I mean, if you keep borrowing and you cannot pay, what will happen? If you borrow from me, I might have to take something, right? So I don't know if you have had news or stories where, say, a Chinese company XY has taken over airport of country XY. They're now monitoring it, or they are collecting back their money. So it will reach a stage where you've overborrowed and you can't pay back, and then the people you've borrowed from will be able to come and say, okay, fine, let's take some of your properties and recover back our money. And that means you cannot now provide efficiently to the general population. And that's where the spiral of either protests, riots, or insecurity start coming in, because the services like roads, the schools, hospitals are not functioning normally.
Are there alternatives to financing public infrastructure, public
Of course,
programs?
yes. There are alternatives. I'll look from a personal level. You can't afford everything, so you have to prioritize. So as a country, we need to prioritize what are the most urgent things that we need to be doing. But also, if we are to prioritize, they always say, cut your cloth according to your coat. That saying should also fit within a country, if the saying is true. We should be able to prioritize. If we are structuring, if the infrastructure, can we use sustainable materials? Can we build actually good roads? Can we build good hospitals? Can we use locally sourced materials, raw materials, so that you can give business to the local community? There's a big component of domestic resource mobilization. Can we mobilize much of the resources domestically? I was impressed during COVID period that when government was looking for money and reach out to the population and say, well, look, we need help, we need money. And a lot of money was generated from the public. But the public can only give you that if they know you're doing, the money you're going to get is not going to go into someone's pocket. It's not going to be stolen away by the few.
Finally, before I let you go, do you see this getting any better, Frank?
It can get better. There's room for improvement, for adjustments. For instance, but of course it begins from the top, from the government itself, from the president, from the cabinet, the ministers, and the parliament itself. They have to reduce on expenditures. For instance, the money paid to MPs earn close to 15,000 US dollars every month or more. And you can imagine the number of MPs we have, over 500 members of parliament, each one earning close to 15,000 US dollars.
That looks like a lucrative business.
Yes, it is business. That's
Indeed, it's very lucrative.
Yes, going into politics, a do or die. People, are threatening other people's lives to enter that house. So it is very expensive. So once they cut the costs, Parliament buys vehicles for MPs expensively after 5 years. If you look at the money they spend on buying vehicles for these over 500 MPs, it is way too much. If you look at other privileges these MPs are entitled to, the government also has created, just like Stephen said, the government has created positions and administrative units that are unnecessary. The president has presidential advisors, more than 100 presidential advisors, and each one is entitled to a hefty pay. Wrapping up, definitely there is hope at the end. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We still have, you never know, things may turn around and be of benefit to every Ugandan, so that we benefit from these loans. If they are meant for roads, let them go straight to the purposes for which the loans have been acquired. By that, we won't have any problem or complaints with the government whatsoever.
I definitely want to become an MP in Uganda. I had intentions for Ghana, but now I think I have to reconsider my choices. But Stephen, before I let you go, in wrapping up, do you think this will get better? Same question as Frank.
Well, it can only get better if the people in authority start seeing it as a problem. You just to wrap up, you had asked me what does this mean for the population? There is always, as time goes by, there will always, if you look at our budget, there is less money for public services, less money to actually do the work. If you say we have 72 trillion, you find like it's only 30 trillion available for spending. The rest of the money is going to debt servicing. Definitely government will always increase taxes. Frank, if you're aware, is that they have been saying now pay as you earn will go up to about 50. What is it, 58%? So that is how it affects the normal person. If 58% of your money you earn from your salary goes to government as pay as you earn, then what are you working for? You're working for less than 50% of your money. The rest of the money goes to government. But these are the cost of the public debt. So everyone should actually stand out. Everyone should stand out and start speaking about the thing. It is good that platforms like this people can listen to it and actually start to realize that, there's a problem brewing. And it might not you might think it's not affecting you directly, but if the government comes out and say, okay, now we want to raise more money through taxes to pay the debts, and then they make 50% of your money goes to government, or every time the government budget comes out, more than 50% goes to debt servicing. We shall be bragging that we have a budget of 100 trillion when 70 trillion is going into debt servicing. Literally, we could just say we have 30 trillion. So those things are what is going to affect the population, and that's how the population is going to be affected. Of course, with better policies, with better new leadership, this can change. It's not too late to change the trend. The government is very optimistic about the oil production. They think when oil comes, they will be able to sell the oil and be able to generate money and pay this debt, which is true in theory, but in practice, we need to stop the corruption. We need to be systematic. We need to negotiate good deals for Uganda. The negotiators, those who are negotiating these loans, need to negotiate good deals for Uganda, because at the end of the day, if you negotiate bad deals, it affects all of us over time.
Very well. one thing I'm picking up is that it's never too late to change the trend. Thank you both so much for your time. Stephen Allo is an economist and a public financial management specialist. We also had DW correspondent in Uganda, Frank Yiga, joining us. Thank you both.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
For Uganda's government, borrowing itself isn't inherently negative. But when billions disappear due to corruption and promised projects fail to materialize, public trust erodes. Some citizens voice their concerns to our correspondent, Frank Yiga.
I think I can give an example of the recent 8 trillion that was borrowed by government. You talk to big people who follow the budgets and they tell you that this money doesn't go to priorities. So government, for all the years, we are now having a debt of more than 100 trillion out there in borrowing. So all this money from all the years we have borrowed, where have they put the money? So which means it has not gone to the priority areas. It's absolutely not right for government to come and tell us now that we are still borrowing this money because we want to do this and this, yet those things have not been done in all these years. You realize that there are speculations out there that ministers even go out to borrow the money and for their own personal gains. And yet it's the local person who pays the tax, who in the end term pays back these loans to these big people, to these big borrowers. So overall, you realize that the money that has been borrowed has not been put into good use, and we cannot go on to continue and borrowing more money, yet that we have borrowed we can't account for.
Debt burden has reached what ordinarily someone would term as critical mass. The borrowing wouldn't have been bad in itself. The question is, when we borrow, how is the money spent? That's where the critical question is. We've lost a lot of money in corruption and then under the guise of borrowed money to improve service delivery. But most often than not, the services are never delivered. But if you go and look at the individuals who are supposed to do this work, their bank balances are fattening, their assets are increasing, and somehow they're living large. But when you look at the service done vis-a-vis the money borrowed, there's nothing there. So I honestly feel like we've reached that point where government needs to stop borrowing and first and foremost, get back to the basics of how money is managed. And for those that are found guilty, they should pay back. It's just as simple as that. And then whatever is paid back is put back into the service delivery. Because then if we don't stop the cycle, then the borrowing will continue, the corruption will continue, and where do we end?
Yeah. Borrowing is, in true economics, genuine economics, borrowing is part and parcel of what governments should do in order to keep money in check, to keep inflation in check and stuff like that. However, third world countries like Uganda are not only borrowing just to keep our finances and economics in check. They are borrowing for the sake of it, for selfish interests. That's why we always say reforms should be done in Uganda before anything else is advanced. We should first of all advance reforms. Now, when you look at these MPs, they will always approve money to be borrowed. Why? Because they know they are beneficiaries in one way or the other. The benefits, the salaries and wages they get in parliament, when you look at them, they are not in tandem with what the national cake has. Yeah, they get much more than where the money should go. So when they approve, it's because they don't feel the burden at the end of the day. Now, when you look at, so if there are no reforms, Parliament will keep on approving and government will keep on abusing it, because there are moments when even government drops money in their dockets. You know that. We've had instances when MPs have received money that cannot be accounted for, and they have gone ahead to approve whatever bill they want to approve. So it goes back to reforms. The reforms must be done in order for us to instill discipline in this government.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
Uganda's debt story goes beyond the numbers. It's about trust, accountability, and the nation's future. As each Ugandan showed us millions in debt, the real issue isn't really about the amount borrowed, but whether public funds are being managed wisely. Share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. I am Ajua Tinkrama Domina. Many thanks for listening.